Here's what I like. Laying on the beach with sunlight in my eyes, laughing with my friends under the sky, following our hearts, so then we take a ride wherever. I always ride.
Alright YouTube, what is happening? I wanted to do this review for quite a long time, and we've had this gimbal for almost 10 months and we've been traveling with it. Belle was shooting with it on the ice, we've been shooting for our YouTube channel, we've been shooting commercially for it, but we didn't get the chance to actually do a proper review. Why is that? Because I didn't really want to review it with the Eos R alone, but I wanted to see if the gimbal is capable of actually holding a cinema camera. But we sold our C200 in the beginning of the year, so it took a little time to actually get one back to test it, because we wanted to get the B version, and here in Europe it's really hard to get your hands on the B version, but I think having the viewfinder would actually kind of distract from the ability to actually run this cinema camera on the Crane 3, but now we actually finally got it, and here's our review. My name is Damien Cooper and welcome to Monkey Pixels.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
So if you haven't seen the first take that Belle did on our YouTube channel a little while ago,
I forgot to say that my name is Belle.
that's true, you forgot it. I recommend you check that out, because I won't be getting into all the things that she already covered.
There's nothing to add, it's just June. June.
I will just get my take on some of the things that she already talked about, but I won't get into details of all the different modes and all that kind of stuff. So check out her little review before you actually watch this one, and then we'll start with mine. So before we talk about the C200, how to balance and run it on the gimbal, let's talk about all the little things that I do and don't like about the gimbal, and just the gimbal and its functions in general. So Belle already gave you her take on the new design, which is really unique, and it was the first of its kind that actually had the handle on the back of the gimbal instead of just having one handle or having the handles to the side. And honestly, I would prefer to have a ring setup or a dual handle setup, because I really like symmetry, and I think the weight distribution is way better if you have the handles symmetrically to each side of the gimbal. But then on the other hand, even when using it with a heavy C200, I really didn't have any problems with the weight distribution, because having one hand on the bottom and one hand on the back actually kind of balanced quite nicely. And the really big advantage of that kind of unique setup is that you can easily go into underslung, and you can carry the camera as well as the gimbal on your side like a suitcase when not shooting and not even having the gimbal turned on. So that is a really big advantage and a game changer, and so I kind of really like the new design. Again, I would have preferred having a ring setup, and that is definitely not possible with the Crane 3, but the unique design definitely has its advantages that I definitely became to love. As for the button layout, I would prefer to have all the major buttons and all the major modes on top of the grip where you actually use it the most. But for some reason, when you're switching between the modes a lot, which I do because I usually like to use the follow mode and the pan follow mode the most, sometimes you have to actually switch on the bottom on the front of the gimbal to go back to the follow mode or the pan follow mode, which really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I would prefer to have it on the right hand on the top of the gimbal. The Crane 3 comes with a quick release base plate, and we didn't really have a lot of luck balancing our front heavier setups like the Eos R with the 16-35 2.8 and the adapter ring, because we couldn't really move the camera to the back enough to actually make the camera setup balance. So we used the regular Manfrotto base plate. I think we even used the one from the Crane 3, and with that one we had no problem balancing even our heavier setups, including the C200. One more thing that I really don't like about the new design is the inability to actually mount accessories to it, like external monitors or a microphone. If you have a ring setup or a dual handle setup, there's plenty of options to mount stuff to it. But with this unique design with the back handle, yes, you do have two 1/4 inch screws to actually mount something to it, but you actually need to have these swivel arms, which I really hate because I haven't found one that was strong enough to actually keep up with a monitor and a battery or even a microphone. And with the design that you can actually quickly go into underslung mode, it's really hard to find the right position for an external monitor. So keep that in mind when using the Crane 3 with a camera like the C200, because it's really hard to attach a external monitor. So Belle already touched on the different modes, and we didn't really use most of the fancy modes like the POV mode or the vortex mode a lot, but we had one job where we filmed something for a figure skater shop and I utilized it there, and it makes for some fun transitions when using the vortex mode. It also makes for some fun and unique shots when using the POV mode, because you can actually twist in and out of a scene, which makes for a really interesting tilt reveal or a POV kind of rotation reveal, which you can definitely be creative with. And I think there's a lot of options you can actually use here to be creative and kind of get a little bit of a different view than you've already seen a million times before. So before we get into the verdict of the entire thing, let's talk about the thing that most of you have been waiting for, the C200. We've already been using the C200 on the Crane 2 a long time ago, and actually the Crane 2 was our travel gimbal of choice when we were still owning the C200, and it worked somewhat well, or at least well enough. So we were kind of excited when the Crane 3 came out because it actually promised to be even stronger than the Crane 2, and it also had a little bit more wiggle room, so naturally we wanted to test the C200 with the Crane 3. So our go-to setup when we were owning the C200 was the C200 without the viewfinder and the 24mm, which I think is a really great gimbal lens. So we were able to easily balance the C200 on the Crane 3 without any problems, and the motors were definitely strong enough to carry the gimbal. And here's some footage that you can see. Obviously it's not 100% perfect, but for a one-handed gimbal with a cinema camera, I think the results are pretty impressive. So this is the footage just straight out of the camera, shot in 25 frames, so there's no slow motion or any effects added to the clip. But if you add some cinematic letterbox, some cinematic color grading, this one was color graded with our custom C200 LUT pack, available on our website, and add some film grain as well as a minor stabilization, the footage is definitely more than usable, and I would have no problem actually using the C200 on the Crane 3 for stabilized shots. Yet you can't get really crazy with it, so if you really want to shoot some sports, running behind some skateboarders or some stuff like that, I don't really think that the C200 really works too well on the Crane 3. But if it's just your average following shot, your pan reveal or your tilt reveal shots, then I think the C200 works totally well with the Crane 3. But we also ran into some problems, especially when mounting an external monitor. So when the HDMI cable is attached, it actually blocks a little bit of the range of motion when tilting, because the back axis is actually in the way of the cable. Or is it the other way around? No, the cable is in the way of the back axis. So you need to get a special HDMI cable that is shaped like an L in order for that not to happen. And the next thing that I already mentioned before, it's really tough to actually mount an external monitor. And since the C200 doesn't have an internal monitor, you need to get creative. So we actually used a field world monitor that is really lightweight and actually fits into the attachment that is usually meant for a phone, which worked pretty well for us. Or if you have a strong enough swivel arm, you could use this to attach an external monitor, but there's no really straight out of the box solution for this, so you need to get creative. I tried to mount it on top of the camera, but that the Crane 3 didn't really handle well, because the weight distribution just wasn't right when mounting the monitor on top of the camera. So since we didn't really have that cable and since we didn't really have a out-of-the-box solution for the external monitor, because we only had the C200 for a day to test this out, this really made for some jittery footage with our setup, but I'm sure if you can find a wireless solution or a really good solution with an L bracket cable on the HDMI port, I think the C200 works very, very well with the Crane 3. But keep one thing in mind, I don't think you'll be able to use an SDI monitor with the Crane 3 because the SDI port is so close to the back axis that I don't think that you'll be able to actually attach an SDI cable without hitting the back axis most of the time when doing even the slightest tilt movements. So our verdict is that this is definitely the best gimbal that we have used pretty much ever. For sports, for fast movements, for heavy cameras, for the versatility, the battery life and all the modes you have, there's really nothing missing other than the fact that you really can't mount a monitor to it on an easy way. You have to be really creative with it. And one more thing that we kind of noticed is that after a couple months the horizon was a little bit tilted in some of the shots, and we have to talk to Zhiyun about that. So maybe our unit is faulty and we need to get it replaced or repaired, but other than that it's really the best gimbal that we have used in a very, very long time. So I hope you like it, and if you want to get your unit, I linked it down in the description below so you can check it out. And I hope that you like this video, and I hope you give it a like button, subscribe to our channel for more content, and I'll hope to see you on the next one.